The Second World War. Stalingrad, Normandy, Sicily, and who could forget Iceland? Yeah, this place. You probably think of hot springs, scenery, glaciers, everything being really, really expensive. What about 1940? What did Iceland do in World War II? Well, when war broke out, Iceland at the time was a sovereign kingdom within the personal union of Denmark. Basically, this guy was the monarch of both nations. Aside from this, Iceland and Denmark were independent, and were simply close allies. Iceland, as well as all the other Scandinavian countries, declared neutrality from the conflict in Europe. However, Operation Wurzbung changed this on April 9, 1940, when Nazi Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. The Danish government quickly declared war on the Axis, but the country was taken by the Germans in less than 6 hours. Iceland very briefly joined Denmark's side, but due to the crushing defeat of the Danes, Iceland flipped back to being neutral. Even if the Icelanders wanted to go to war, they would have no influence in straight-up conflict. This was due to them having a military consisting of 60 police officers. That was it. Although what Iceland lacked in military force or size, they made up for it in location. Supply lines from North America could be heavily influenced from bases set up on the island, as well as playing a crucial role in the battle for the Atlantic, with aircraft being stationed on Icelandic territory. Meanwhile, Britain had been eyeing up Iceland to become a potential ally. With the strength of Iceland's position in mind, the British were eager to jump on the opportunity before Germany. Many Allied officials were convinced that Adolf Hitler was thinking the same, which he might have been. Okay, chaps, we really need friends. Maybe Iceland? Hey, Iceland, wanna be friends? No, not really. Please? No, I'm good. We're experiencing some difficulties. Do they even have a military? No. The operation proceeded to be named Operation Fork. The operation was rushed into action and was organized very haphazardly. The British took 746 Royal Marines and put them onto 4 warships bound for Iceland. However, even this was screwed up by the disorganized British. Although, to be fair, they had bigger things on their hands. The departure ended up being over a 24-hour span schedule, caused by the movement of supplies and equipment being fraught with several delays and setbacks. There was a shortage of weapons, and not a single person aboard the ships knew Icelandic. The trip took about 2 days, and the conditions were cramped. Many soldiers developed serious seasickness. The warships were to reach Iceland and invade it on May 10, 1940. As they neared the island, the HMS Berwick launched a reconnaissance plane to spot German submarines possibly sitting in the harbor. The plane they launched was the famous Supermarine Walrus. Although the plane was not supposed to fly over the landing site of Reykjavik, the aircraft did anyway. Because Iceland had no planes of its own, the loud noise woke everyone up. The chief of police, Einar Arnold, suspected a British arrival. Meanwhile, the German consul in Iceland was quickly making his way to the harbor. He too was awoken by the aircraft, and he suspected the worst. Using binoculars, he confirmed his hunch by spotting the British warships. He returned to his home and began burning documents that he feared would fall into enemy hands. The police had also spotted the ships. As the carrier with over 400 men on board approached, a crowd gathered alongside police officers. The troops began to unload, and everyone just looked at each other. This may have been an invasion, but there was no resistance. The Prime Minister, who was the acting leader of the Icelandic forces, ordered no violence to take place. In the following days, he even made an announcement telling locals to treat the British with politeness and as guests. A small amount of resistance was felt by a handful of locals and the crew of a German freighter who was in Iceland at the time, but the invasion was over. The illegal Operation Fork concluded with the British seizing the German consulate and a portion of its unburnt documents. In the following months, the British began to sculpt Iceland for operations and missions in the Atlantic, as well as letting it serve as a protective shield for men and supplies crossing the ocean. In time, Canadian and British troops began to arrive in larger and larger numbers. Even the neutral United States stationed men in Iceland. When the US entered the war in late 1941, the number of American troops in Iceland drastically increased, overtaking the British as the prominent Allied force on the island. This led to the construction of more modern structures, namely the Keflavik International Airport, which continues to be Iceland's only international aircraft terminal. For the Icelanders, the opinion on whether involvement in the war was beneficial is still a debated topic. The United States and England's occupation of the island increased Iceland's aims to become a more technologically advanced nation, and sculpted the foundation for the Western European society it has today. There is a strong point to argue that the involvement kickstarted the respectable tourist-driven economy it has currently. In contrast, several believe that the illegal invasion was a violation of Iceland's sovereignty and independence. The Western identity that the country has today can be seen as a negative aspect, for it was introduced to the small Nordic country and is taken away from the Icelandic heritage. Furthermore, about 230 Icelanders lost their lives throughout the war, mostly sank on ships in the North Atlantic. The invasion of Iceland was possibly one of the most peaceful and violating military campaigns in history. Often overlooked in the history books, Iceland was one of the most fascinating nations to never join a side in the Second World War, yet continued to play a crucial role in the battle against the Axis forces.